Mr. Rogers says, look for the helpers. This is about a very heartwarming story on a very tragic day. Cindy, where were you and what were you doing on 9/11?
9/11, the event of the Twin Towers was really, I actually was homeschooling. I remember carrying a child. I had a child in my arm, and I had a friend that had helped me set up my TV so I could do school like with a satellite dish and everything. And so we had the TV set up, but we didn't watch like mainstream TV at all. And then she called me up, my friend that helped me with the satellite, and she's like, turn on your TV. The Twin Towers are going down. And I live in the country. And I was like, what is she talking about? The Twin Towers. I didn't even know that much about New York City. And so I was like, Twin Towers. So I turned it on, and I just couldn't like grasp what I was seeing. Like, what am I seeing? What's happening? It just seemed so out of, like, is this even real? And the more it kept playing and playing, and then I live in New England, which is sort of, it's like 5 hours from New York, so I'm not really that far. And people fly out of Boston and go to New York and different things like that. So then I was like, there could be people that I know that have been affected by this. I could know somebody, and I just remember the horrific thoughts of the police running in, and then all of the buildings and the firefighters and all of the buildings going down, and people looking for their loved ones, and just, couldn't sleep for several days, just trying to process all of this information. It was just a horrible time.
Yes, and one correction. So the Twin Towers were not the only things affected. What about the Pentagon and Flight 93, which was probably going to either the White House or the Capitol? So yeah, I had to point that out, being that I'm from the DC metro area. Yeah. So do you know anyone who was affected?
Well, at that time, I didn't hear of anyone, like, within the first week or two, that anyone that I knew that was either in a plane or was in the building. But interesting enough, along the way, I met a guy who, his dad was a businessman, and they were close friends of ours. And his father was killed in one of the planes that was, I don't know, I think it went into the Twin Towers. Okay. And I met a guy just last night, a guy that I've known for a while. And he said that his niece was killed in the Twin Towers. She was working there. She'd gone early to work, and she was in the Twin Towers. And he said this man has 5 siblings, and he doesn't have any nieces or nephews anymore. And she was killed in that tragic experience. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like you. I don't know anyone directly, but I'm 2 degrees separation from a lot of people. Like, I know people that know people. My husband, someone he knew in high school, was in one of the Twin Towers. It's like, I don't know, just somebody I used to go to Bible study with was a teacher and had a student whose parent died from, I think, one of the flights that went out of Dulles Airport in DC. And yeah. And then, I don't know, just who else? Seems like here and there I know people who know people, especially that I grew up in the DC area. And I remember, I think there was a reporter, and his family or his wife was on that one flight. So yeah.
So how many people actually died in that whole?
It was just it was just under 3,000. So it was like almost, it was like 2,900 and something was the exact number, but it's about 3,000 people.
So would that include the Pentagon thing?
Yes.
And all the airplanes? Okay. Yeah. Because I think at the time they were saying it was going to be like 5,000 or 6,000. So I think the number went, not that it's any better,
Yeah.
but I think the number was a little lower than they were saying at first.
Yeah. And also, I was reading online, somebody was like, well, let's not just talk about the people that died on 9/11, but what about the people who had after effects? So, like,
Right.
you know, some people breathed in that air, that big cloud of smoke that was in New York. Maybe they were reporters covering, and maybe they died like 10 years later, but it was from the smoke inhalation. You know, it wasn't, they didn't live a normal life. Maybe they died earlier than they would have. So, yeah.
I actually also, I thought of another person. I was in recently, I had gone down to Virginia and visited my friend and, or my, my sister-in-law actually. And I went to a Bible study, and at the Bible study, this couple that owned the home, they had all these fire department decorations. And it turned out that the woman's husband was one of the firefighters that went to the Pentagon.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, being from Virginia.
Yeah.
Actually, here's a fun fact. The Pentagon's actually in Virginia. It's literally right on the border of Virginia and DC. But it's actually in Virginia, but we say DC because it's like right there. Just
Yeah.
um
Well, he was retired, so
Yeah.
he was there at that time. And so that was interesting because a lot of people say that maybe that didn't really happen. It was just kind of a made up story.
Oh
I don't know
gosh.
if you've ever heard of that.
Oh my gosh. Someone was telling me that today. Please don't
Oh,
say that to
really?
my face, or I don't know what I'll
Well,
do,
she
but
said that he has like a slideshow that he shows everyone and talks about it. So I said, so it really happened? She's like, oh yeah.
oh my goodness. It's
Yeah, he was
probably
there.
like Gen Z that wasn't even alive when it happened. Like, we know it
Yeah.
happened. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll tell you my 9/11 story.
Okay.
So I was driving to the gym, and I heard them talk about how, oh, there's a plane that hit the North Tower, but these DJs that I listen to are always joking around. So I'm like, are they joking? This can't be right.
Oh, yeah.
And then I get to the gym and go in, and I see that that's what happened. Oh my goodness. And then
Yeah, so you were going to do exercise and
yeah.
then you found out, oh my word. So was everybody in there like so shocked?
Yeah, like everybody was
Yeah.
crowding around the TV.
Oh my word.
So, yeah, I went home and stayed that day, but at the time, I was actually working in DC. I was working across the street from the Capitol. And so my parents knew. I see, this is how well I remember 9/11. I remember it was a Tuesday, and I had Tuesdays off because I was working in TV, and I worked Saturdays. So you had like a day off in the middle of the week. So I was off that day. But we were close enough to the Capitol where if Flight 93 had hit the Capitol, it could have killed my coworkers or hurt them or
Wow.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I remember my parents were they were in Vegas because I don't know why they had a trip there, which that's a whole nother story. It took them forever to get home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because they landed all the planes, which we're
Mhm.
going to talk about in a minute. But my in-laws didn't know that I had Tuesdays off, and so I mean they were freaked out. And I have an uncle who sometimes works at the Pentagon. He doesn't work there every day as his regular job, but sometimes his job required him to go
Wow.
there. So I remember my cousin, my
Mm.
aunt, they were all worried about him, but luckily he did
Yeah.
not go to the Pentagon that day. And but the Pentagon is flat and it's shaped like a pentagon. So like even though part of it was hit by a plane, literally there's parts of it
Right.
that stayed open even the rest of the day, if that's not crazy. But
Wow, that
my
is crazy.
husband, yeah, my husband worked maybe 5 minutes from the Pentagon at the time, and he heard this loud bang, but he thought it was just like someone dumping their trash in a trash dump or something. But so he found out later that was the plane that hit the Pentagon. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that's great. So if anyone ever said to me, "Oh, are you sure it really happened?" Like it would make my blood boil because
Mhm.
it's a personal story to me.
Yeah.
And I remember that day, all the national news was covering the Twin Towers, and I wanted to hear about the Pentagon. So I watched local news like the rest of the day. I remember my sister was off work, or maybe she got off work for 9/11. She came over, spent the day with me. But that day literally still feels like it's yesterday, so much so that I can't even believe that my kids I didn't even have kids yet. They weren't even alive yet. I know, that's crazy to me because it does feel like it's just happened yesterday that they were. And by the way, Cindy, I know that some of your kids are the same age as mine, but you have older kids too.
Right.
How many kids did you have at the time of 9/11?
That's a good question. I think I had my 6th.
Okay.
Maybe no. It had to. I was in this house, so my 8th child was born.
So Cindy is 13. For those who don't know,
I think it might have been. Actually, my son Benjamin was probably the youngest. So.
And then, how old was your oldest at that time?
So, what year was it again?
2001.
2001. Yeah. Benjamin was my baby. Let's see. So she would have been like 10.
Okay. And we had actually,
12.
We had actually just gone to Italy a month before. So I'm glad we did that trip before, because they landed all the planes, for those who don't know, which my parents had trouble getting home from Vegas. They had to like rent a car, which this is a good segue, because we're going to talk about a story where tons of the planes were landed. Let me give people a little backstory. So we're talking about Gander, Newfoundland, Canada. There is a World War II base there. So it was a huge hub, a huge base during World War II. It's a small town. That base wasn't really being used anymore. But when George W. Bush demanded that all the planes be landed, all these planes had to go somewhere. And they had this huge airport because of World War II in Gander, Newfoundland. So they all land there. And then the town is like, what are we going to do with all these people?
Right. So let's just say the name of the book. What was the book?
Yeah. It is called The Day the World Came to Town by Jim DeFeed. I hope I'm saying his name right.
Okay. So I kind of listened to this book because I travel back and forth to school, and so it's kind of nice to listen to a story. And Kelly, you're the one that mentioned to read it, listen to it. And I really thought it was a really inspiring book.
Yes.
And I did go back and look at the statistics because it has been a little while since I read the book. Did you look at the statistics?
No, but while you're finding it, let me show everybody. I have another picture here. So I also saw the play, and the play was called, hold on, before I share screen. The play was called Come From Away, which I saw the play before I read the book. I saw the play back in 2022, and the play was about this book. I saw that first. Let me share. My daughter and I, it's called Come From Away. We had really good seats. As you can see, the bottom picture is the stage right behind me. We were literally in the second row. We were still wearing masks back then. So I guess it was 2022 in March. Okay. Yeah. So, I recommend the play as well and the book.
Oh, I would like to see the play. That would
you should. I hear they're traveling, going to different cities.
Oh, that's cool.
And if anyone's here, it says like we have 2 live. Say hi and tell me where you were and what you were doing on 9/11.
So I read that it was 38 planes. They were redirected to this location because it was prepared for multiple planes to land. And, it wasn't a regular airport that normally did this much traffic.
Right.
And I read that it was the population of the town is 10,000.
Right. It's a very small town.
Yeah. That's kind of about the size that the town that I live in.
Oh, wow. So but you're surrounded by people. This seemed like it was a small town that's kind of isolated.
Right. And that's what I was going to say is it sounds like kind of a lot of people, but when you're in a small town, it's almost like it's weird because you do see some of the same people all the time. And I tell people it's like Mayberry RFD. But we've had people that have had like their house burned down, or they
wow.
had some kind of tragic event and the people in the town just gathered together.
Oh,
But in
wow.
this story, it said 38 planes, and it said, I think it said 7,000 people.
Right. So they were huge planes. So
Yeah. So all
38,
of a
and they're really
sudden,
big ones. They were international. There were some people who came
yeah.
from like, who were traveling from like Europe and
Yeah,
yeah.
they were, one family was traveling from, they had just picked up an adopted
Yes.
child and they were traveling home, and they'd been away from home and they couldn't wait to get home and get situated. And so basically the town of 10,000 had almost the same number of people show up on their
Yes.
doorstep all of a sudden.
Yeah. And that couple that got stranded there, they also had a younger daughter, which I think they had
Oh,
left with grandparents. So that was enough. Like they wanted to
yeah,
get home to their younger daughter. And I can't imagine as a mom, especially the little ones, how that must have felt. And
right.
also the daughter probably missed her parents so much,
Right.
and then
And
they,
the thing is, I thought of like the uncertainty, like we look at it
Mhm.
now and we look at the whole thing as an experience, but
Yes.
when they were going through it, they had no idea really what happened. They didn't know like if their plane had been hijacked. They
Yeah.
didn't know if they were going to be in danger. They didn't know if the country was like, they didn't know anything about
Right.
anything, and it
Because they
wasn't a
hadn't
really
seen the
easy way to
news.
find out. Yeah.
Right. They were on an airplane. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, and I mean, there were so many characters in this book and in the movie that it was hard to keep up with everybody because how many people did you say? 7,000?
Yeah,
Yeah.
7,000. So they just
So
picked out a few to tell the reader about some of the, I don't know, the
right.
stories they knew about, I guess.
Right. So, and even within just listening to the audiobook and seeing the play, I had trouble, even with the play where you could see
Yes.
everybody, I had trouble keeping up with everyone. And in the
Yeah.
play, they actually had everybody playing multiple characters.
Oh,
So they
wow. That
start
makes
off
it
with,
confusing.
well, it does, but they always had something distinguishing, like they'd
Okay.
wear different things or look different, or
Mhm.
when they were being that person, or sometimes they'd be an old person and a younger
Mhm.
person or something. They start off with the scene in like Gander, and everybody's friendly and everybody knows each other.
Mhm.
And yeah, these people, first they didn't know what to do. At first they're just like, what do we do with these people? And the people had to like sit on the plane. Some of them sat on for like 24
Mm.
hours. And I mean, people did have cell phones in 2001, but not everybody had a cell phone in 2001. I think it was like, some people didn't. Um, so, I mean, and so a lot of people were just trying to call back to their loved ones or couldn't get a hold of anyone. And remember, all the cell towers went down too. So people were
Right.
like trying to call their loved ones and they couldn't,
Mhm.
unless they could get to a landline. So yeah, they kind of set like, what are we going to do with all these people? And then
Mhm.
they brought them to a school. The school was kind of like the house, the safe haven, like the Superdome, like like Hurricane Katrina Superdome. It was kind of like that for 9/11. For the Gander, Newfoundland people on the plane, they all went to this school, and that's where they let them. They set up beds, but the people came together. They were the ones that donated food, donated clothing. Um,
Yeah, they just like, it was just amazing to read about, like they would just show up and say, "Do you need to go to the store?" And they take people to the store and help them to get toiletries and all the things they needed, and bring them towels to, I don't know. I mean, it's almost hard to figure out where everybody was.
Yeah, because there were so many people. But the thing is, too, then people would be like, hey, want to borrow my car? This total
Yeah.
stranger. Or like, hey, come on to my house and take a shower, and you can stay here if you want. And I'm
Mhm.
going to work, leaving a total stranger in their house, like so trusting of these
Yeah.
people, giving their shirts off their back. Just
Mhm.
that was just their town and how they were and how they operated. But yeah, I mean, Where do we start? What characters do we want to talk about? Because there were so many. So we already talked about the adopted people, and I think it was it Russia, Ukraine, where they had adopted a baby? One of those. Somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I was just gonna say something. I was gonna ask, do you think that the people were nice? They were nicer because they knew what had happened, like with the Twin Towers and everything? Or do you think if this had happened on just a random day, they would have been just as nice?
Well, you know what? From everything that I've heard and the stories, I think they would have been just as nice on any day. Because I've heard accounts from other people who've just visited who are like, yes, they're the most amazing people. Like that's just how they are, how they operate. And that's the kind of people. I mean, it sounds like the middle of nowhere, but I still want to visit Gander, Newfoundland, Canada.
Oh yeah, did we say why it's called Gander? I thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh no, but hold on, I'm going to say hi to All Things Pink Impossible. Thank you for coming. Amazing stories. Thank you for talking about this. Yes, no problem. We thought this story needed to be told. It's a really good book too. Yeah. I highly recommend. Yeah, go ahead. How did it get this name?
Because the head of it was shaped like a goose, right?
Like a gander.
A gander. Yeah. And so I was trying to picture that. Is that like the airstrip is kind of shaped like...
Let me get up a map.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And that it was used as an airstrip, but it wasn't being used like currently for that purpose. So it just like had everything as a perfect location for this type of event, although it wasn't really obviously planned.
Right. Yeah, no, it was because it was it was used for World War II and it wasn't being used anymore. Okay, so here's Gander, Newfoundland. So I don't know, do you think it's shaped like a gander?
Well, I think when you look at it from an aerial view, it's supposed to be.
Okay.
I don't know if did they have a picture in the book?
Oh, I don't remember. I read the audio like you did, so I didn't.
Oh, that's right. Stupid question.
So let's see. There was a couple that met if you remember this couple in the play, I think she was from Texas and he was from England. But then I thought when I read it in the book, they were both like she was from Texas and he was from somewhere else. I don't know why they would have changed it in the play, but they ended up they didn't know each other and they ended up getting together after being in that school together or something by the end. Do you remember? Just to let people know, Cindy and I read this a few months ago, and we're both busy. So we read it a few months ago and never got a chance to talk about it. Then said, "Hey, let's talk about it on 9/11."
Okay, so I got a little bit of a picture of the airport.
Okay.
I gotta turn my background off.
I'm gonna make you bigger.
That's
too.
It's gonna be fun if I can figure that out.
Is there a way to take me off?
There we go.
How do I take myself off the air? Let's see.
I think you can put yourself in smaller.
Okay.
But it's kind of, reject cookies. Okay. And it's kind of like a circular, it said. And that's not the page I wanted to show you. It's kind of like a circular type. And so they go in and they fuel and where'd she go?
I'm still here. I was putting you on the screen in case you wanted to show your phone.
I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm all alone here. But I found a picture and then it turned off. But it's kind of like they would go in, refuel, and go out. So it was kind of like a circular motion. So I think that's what made it look like a goose head.
Okay. Yes. So. And just to let you know, Cindy just won the primary for New Hampshire state representative yesterday. So she's been very busy.
Yeah, I've been very busy.
And I just started school. So yeah.
Yeah.
So who are some of the other characters we could talk about? There's so many of them.
Yeah. I was thinking about the animals, how they helped all the animals,
Yes.
and
It was
because
one particular lady.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they like some of the people were like, "Oh well, they're just animals.
Yeah.
We don't have the resources or the time to deal with them." And then this one person said that's not acceptable. So they
Right.
went in and helped all the animals. So I thought that was, something we don't think of, that
Yes.
all these things happen and then there's also other innocent victims in these situations. So that was kind of
Yeah.
cool.
It was one lady, I think she owned something to do with animals. Was it a
Mhm.
petting zoo or something? She owned that, so she was very into animals. So her first thought was, are there animals on the plane? Let's take care of them. Let's get them out. There was a monkey was one of them, but but a lot of cats and dogs.
Right.
People travel with their animals, and then she took them into her house and fed them and took care of them there until, you know, till everything was over. But yeah, that's another thing. And I mean, think of all the 3,000 people that died, if any of them, especially if they lived alone and they maybe had a pet at
Oh,
their apartment
yeah.
who wasn't found for
Oh,
hours
my
or something like
word.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. Um,
That's sad.
yes. So let's see. Oh, the food. Let's talk about the food at the school. There was, so one of the people on one of the planes ended up being like a professional chef. And then they had all these dietary restrictions. I mean, think about the
Yeah.
Muslims don't eat pork and neither do the Jewish people, and then
Mhm.
and they're all from different parts of the country. Oh, so many people spoke so many different languages because they were
Right.
international
That's
flights.
true too.
And
Yeah.
they didn't have interpreters for all these languages. And so that was another issue, was trying to communicate. But the people of Gander were so patient, and there were even some mistrusting people, especially there was one airplane where people were escaping a war from a war, and like they were very mistrusting. But the people of Gander just kept loving on them, and they came around, eventually, but it took a while, especially with not understanding the language.
I mean, just think about it. If you knew that the Twin Towers went down, you heard of 3 different airplanes that crashed. I mean,
Four.
think about what we were, yeah, 4. What we went through,
Mm-hmm.
and we had uncertainty, and we were at home, and they were in an airplane, number
Yeah.
1. Number 2, they went to a strange place they'd never expected to go. And
Right.
yeah, no matter what, I think I'd be just a little bit scared.
Yes. And some of them didn't even know what happened at 9/11 by the time that they landed. So they're like, why are we here? What's going
Right.
on? All things Pink and Possible, let us know where you were and what you were doing on 9/11. And anyone else here, say hi too. Yes. And then, so one of the guys on one of the planes ended up being a professional chef, and eventually was like, hey, I'll volunteer to make the meals. And then all of a sudden the meals were like awesome. They had like the best meals because this chef was making the meals for them all. Um, but yeah, there were, I'm trying to think what other characters stood out to you.
I was thinking about, I was just trying, I don't know all the names, like I can't
Yeah, there's
remember all the
too many of
names.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about, like, there was a couple that somebody invited them in and just told them they could, go to the store and get whatever toiletries they wanted. Can you imagine, like, some stranger helping you get like the basics, like,
Yeah.
you want to take a shower. Most people don't like to just go take a shower in some strange person's house, you
Right.
know.
But the
People,
alternative was they hadn't taken a shower in days because they were at this
right,
school, so they all felt disgusting. And
right.
maybe they, for whatever reason, they couldn't get to their luggage. Their
Oh
luggage was
yeah,
still on the airplane.
right.
So they didn't have a shower. They were wearing the same clothes. And yeah, so I mean, there were so many different people, but I think at one point there was a bus that took everybody to
Right.
Walmart. At least you can get underwear. I think they went and bought a bunch of underwear and things for
I
the
remember
people.
thinking about how stocked up they were. Like, you know, that's like double the population and
Yeah.
wanting certain things of the same things, I would think you'd run out after a while.
Well, it
But
sounds like the people also donated some of their own clothes from their own
yeah,
house. So when I say
yeah.
they literally gave the shirt off their
Shirt off
back.
their back, yeah.
Yes. And then I thought Walmart donated, like the company Walmart, not right away, but eventually they found out and they donated some stuff too. Let's see. All things Pink Impossible says, "Oh my, I was home playing with my baby. It was a good day and the whole world changed around us." Okay. You don't have to tell us specifically where you live, but do you live near where one of the planes would have hit, like DC or New York or, well, Pennsylvania, but that was intended to go to the White House.
Right.
Yeah, if anyone ever, I saw the movie of Flight 93. Those people were heroes. Those were another people that were heroes.
Yes, that was a good. It was a tragic story, but a
tragic in one
story.
way. Right.
Heroic story.
Yeah, tragic because those people lost their lives, but heroic because they probably saved thousands more. You know. So yeah. All right. Yes. So, and then there was one scene where all of a sudden they party, they go out, and the people of Gander show them what they do for a good time. I think they I don't know, they kiss a fish or something. I remember this from the book and the movie. Yeah. They like, that's something they do in Gander is they kiss a fish and a raw fish. And people are like, heck no. But I guess they all eventually like did it.
That's pretty exciting.
East Coast, but miles away. Okay. Yeah. Yes. And there were so many people. Now, and so
I think the greatest thing was just trying to put yourself in their situation and then thinking about, I think the hardest thing is like getting out of your mind what you expected to do that day and then having to accept the situation, and then you have to accept the help from other people. And then even in accepting the help from other people, they made friends. Like during a tragic situation, they actually became friends and they became like connected, you know, not just by the situation, but in their spirit. And just, it's just the way humanity is. During a hard time, somehow we, you know, pull it together. I mean, yesterday I was in a political situation, and people aren't always that nice when they think that you don't believe like them. But I always keep in my mind, if a tragedy happens, we're all of a sudden going to help each other.
We're human.
I think that's the greatest story in this, is that does show that in a tragedy, we put everything aside and we just help each other. And we become something that we, because of the tragedy, we become something that we might not even expect until it actually happens.
Definitely. I mean, you even saw that in New York. New Yorkers are not known for being friendly at all, but that day, everybody just helped each other. Even, I remember I was taking the ferry. I also live 5 hours from New York, and I visit a lot because my sister lives there, although back then I wasn't visiting a lot. But when I was taking the ferry to the Statue of Liberty, I remember reading about how they didn't even worry about how many people were supposed to be on the boat. They just loaded as many people as possible and would take people over to the New Jersey side, then come back and get more people. So there's so many people that were helping. I mean, we all already know about the firefighters and the policemen, and rightfully so. They've been talked about a lot, and they should be. But now we want to talk about, you know, some of the other helpers, you know, person who happened to be running the ferries that day was taking people. There's people of Gander, Newfoundland. I often think, would I have done this? You know, you would say to yourself, well, I don't want a total stranger in my house. What if they like steal something? You know what I mean? But I think it is different when you live in a big city, but that's just how their small town was. All the people just took in people. And the nice thing about this story too is that there's people to this day who were there in 2001, 9/11, and they still go back and visit. So that just shows how much of an impact.
Right.
And just to piggyback off what you were saying, I can imagine something that tragic, like that, you would remember that, and I could see how they would all be bonded over that.
Right. And it would
sure.
just, that's what I, just reading different stories about that is that, they did make lifelong friends. It wasn't just, thanks for the help, goodbye. It was like, we're connected for life. And
definitely.
I think that's what tragedies do to people.
Yes, and they even collected money, and the people from Gander were like, no, we don't want money. They insisted. They're like, take the money, There was one really grumpy guy that was in the play, but I don't remember him in the book, but he was so grumpy, but like he came around by the end, like slowly but surely. The people of Gander won him over. And they just had, as you can imagine, with you said 7,000 people, there's a lot of different personalities from all different parts of the United States, from all over the world. So it took these people a while to get back to where they were going. There was a gay couple too, who ended up breaking up by the end, but
yeah. Well, that you spoke of the money. I read somewhere that at the time they raised like $15,000 for the kids' education.
Oh, that's great.
And that it, I don't know. They said it multiplied into the millions. So I don't know like how that worked, but it kept growing. It's not like it was, they raised money one point in time and that was it. Like it was a long-term money for the kids in Gander for their education.
Oh, that's great.
So,
now that you mentioned that, I remember reading that in the back of the book, and I remember going to the website and thinking, oh, this is so good. Like they're still accepting money and helping people, but in a different way. Yeah, again, I'll have to go back and look for that website, but that was really good. But there was just so many good stories, and these people were incredible people. And it was like, the mayor. Wait, there was something about the mayor. Do you remember the story? What was the mayor doing that day of 9/11? Did he have the day off or something?
I don't even remember that part.
Okay. Again, we read this so long ago, and we both have been busy. I'm going to see if I could get him up. And then they had like bus drivers. I think everyone who had a way to help came together and helped. Hold on.
So this is a mural that I found.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to take myself.
Representing the event. And this says that it was a mural created for Gander, Newfoundland in the 9/11 Memorial Museum.
Oh, and I've been to the 9/11 Memorial Museum. I will have to go look for that. I will tell you the particular day that I went, usually because when you're in New York City, you're trying to fit in a couple things during the day because, I'm only there for a week, or let's do two things that are in this area. So, but by the 9/11 museum was so extensive that like by the time I got towards the end, I was kind of like tired and rushed through it. So I'd love to go again, and I would like start at the end and go backwards. But I will have to look for that quilt.
It's a mural.
Okay.
You can see that it has all the different flags at the top, like all the different countries and a whole bunch of airplanes. And it has, it says it was, what does it say? Never be forgotten. Love, love.
Yeah, and I feel like I think I posted this on my personal Facebook, but I feel like people are starting to forget, and I really hate that. I'm just seeing less people posting about it every year, less people talking about it. So I think we need to keep the conversation going and let them know. And what really turned my own daughter around one year is we were driving to my parents' house because she used to like stay with my parents during the day when I was working. And they replayed all the news stories from 9/11. They
Yeah.
played them like as if they were happening. So you were listening to the newscast as if it was like 2001. And then she goes, I get it now. I get what you
Oh,
guys went through.
wow.
And then she spent the whole day at my parents' house that day watching 9/11 stories on TV.
Mm.
And so I wish I could say my son had that same epiphany, but I haven't gotten him yet. But I think it's really important that as much as you don't want to show them the horrific events, that maybe wait till they're age appropriate, but that really happened. And I think it's a story needs to be told. I mean, it's still a story that, well, most adults, although now that Gen Z is growing up, maybe not as all, but most adults have lived through. So,
Right. And the thing about it is too that it shows us how vulnerable we are,
mhm,
and we're not immune to tragedy,
yeah,
and acts of terrorism can happen, and I don't know, it's kind of uh, it's hard for me because the actual amount of people that were evil in that situation were few, but the victims were many.
right. But those
So
few people made that many victims.
right, but the other thing is that most people are do look out for each other. I think that's what you learn kind of in a situation like this, that you can band together with the goodness. And sometimes being in like a political realm, you might disagree on certain um, laws, or what do you call it, policies, or whatever it is that we disagree on. But the truth is, most humans want kids to be safe. They want to help each other. If you see someone who's hurting, you want to help them. You don't just sit back and go, oh, that person's hurting, I'm going to go hide. I mean, usually people respond to trouble and they try to help each other. They don't stop and say, so what do you believe about blah, blah, blah? Okay, if
Yeah.
you believe about this, I'm not going to help you. And that's what I try to tell people in my community. Like, let's talk. And even though we disagree on things, we can still have a conversation, and we can still look out for each other, and the more you do that, hopefully that spreads, and we can circumvent certain tragic stories.
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny you say that because I was actually working at a political TV station when it happened, like I was telling
Oh,
you at the
okay.
beginning. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking after 9/11, like, what the heck were we talking about before? Like,
Mm,
all the things that we were talking about before 9/11 seemed so trivial. It was
yeah.
stuff like campaign finance, or it
Yeah.
was so trivial. Even
Yeah.
I remember saying to my coworkers, like, who cares what we were talking about before? It was just so insignificant. And I remember
Mhm.
actually a lot of people turned to God, and the
Yeah.
churches attendance at churches was going
Mhm.
up, like because people realize any day, you never know. Like no one could have predicted 9/11. You never know when
Right.
it's your time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that we've had the tragedy like in 2020 where we were all sent home, and we
Yeah.
had all of that situation, and um it just, we're just nothing's really set in stone. So,
Right. No one could have predicted a global pandemic either.
right, being thankful for today and what we have, and kind of strengthen yourself so that you can be a helper
Right.
in that time of need. Like,
Definitely.
if everybody's desperate, then it's harder to help people. But if you try to fortify yourself in your spirit, get to know, like, in my community, I have friends that are actually teaching like first aid, because I think that's
Mm,
kind of something that goes by the wayside with everyday life. I mean, I learned first aid when I went to camp, and when I
mhm.
was first a babysitter, stuff like that. But bringing back the different ways that we can help each other if there is something that happens that's more than the everyday problems.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And there were just so many people. There were people who all of a sudden joined the military after this happened. There were people who were firefighters in other parts of the country that just got in their car and drove to New York to help. So
Right.
there were so many people, or there were people who were off that day, but didn't even think twice about going into work, when they saw what was happening, because I mean, like firefighters and police and who wanted to help. So
Yeah. That's just, it just brings back memories of
I know
watching that kind of stuff. It's
it
like you're
does.
watching it on the TV, they're going towards it. Like,
Yeah.
how can they, nobody really, you couldn't wrap your mind around what was actually
No.
happening.
No, and I was actually, I made myself watch stuff today because I don't want to forget. I was watching something today which reminded me that they had so many beds, like the hospitals in New York brought beds outside because they were ready for all these people to come, and the people didn't come because
Oh
most of
my
them
word.
died.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So just
Mm.
a terrible tragedy.
Mm.
So, but we're talking about the people that did good things, whether it was in Gander or it was joining the military or the firefighters, the policemen, the nurses and doctors, although unfortunately they didn't get to help as many people as they would have liked, or just the person on the street that went and checked. One of the things I was watching today was the guy was a journalist, and he's like, he saw a woman with a baby, and the baby was the same age as his own baby. And he goes, I decided to be a human, and I stopped filming and went and asked her how she was doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll never forget like the list they had of
I
people
know.
that were missing and just looking for those people and then realizing the more time that went by that they weren't coming back. That's just the worst.
I know. And people put signs up everywhere all over New York City because they didn't know. They were holding out hope, like all of us would, that their loved one would turn up alive.
Right.
Yeah. And only a few, very few, were saved from rubble. And it was usually like a policeman or something who had a walkie or something where he could communicate. So, yeah.
So, but the story of Gander, I didn't know about it until you recommended to read that book. So I didn't really know anything about it. And there may be more stories that are similar. We just don't know about them.
Yep.
But just knowing that there was an activity that happened, that people were able to band together and help one another, and that even during that uncertain time, they weren't even home and they were still able to have safety. And they knew a part of humanity that was good. So
right. Yeah. And I didn't know about it until I saw the play in 2022. So I'm glad someone decided to tell their story through a play, because their story deserved to be told. They were incredible, and they stepped up.
So how long did they stay in the in Gander? I can't remember exactly how long
I think it was a few months, but I don't remember. Here, let me Google it.
I didn't think it was that long.
I thought it was, or was it at least a few weeks? Like it was longer than because remember, like it took a while before they started letting planes back in again. And then if they were from America or another country that wasn't Canada, you had to go through security checkpoint, which was super high after 9/11, rightfully so.
It says here it was 5 days.
Oh, really?
I didn't think it was months. Okay, so it says here, the passengers and crew remained there for 5 days. The planes landed in Gander after the captain announced the airspace in New York was closed. And then September 13th, the flights were beginning to open back up. And 5 days later, they came that the aircraft were permitted to leave and buses rounded up the passengers.
Oh my goodness. See, the story was so extensive, I guess, because
Yeah,
there's
it
so
was a
many that it
lot in
seemed
5
like,
days.
yeah, that really, because the story and the way they needed food and clothes and stay, like, it seemed like when you're reading the book that it was much longer.
Yeah.
I'm so surprised. It was 5 days. So when you read the book, keep in mind this long,
Yeah,
huge
keep in
story
mind,
is
these
only
are a lot,
5 days.
only 5 days.
That is
It says
crazy.
here that they were, they called this Operation Yellow Ribbon.
Mm,
That's what they called it. The event nearly doubled the population of Gander.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it says here the funds, the passengers and crew diverted flights created a scholarship fund for students in the Gander area. The fund's initial donation of $15,000 has grown to more than $1 million.
That's great. Let me show the book one more time. So this is The Day the World Came to Town, 9/11 in Gander, Newfoundland. So, yeah, but we highly recommend the book. I recommend the play. I don't even know if it's still running in New York City, but I have seen that it's coming to other cities. Like I've seen it's near the city where I live now. So maybe if it's traveling, it'll come near you. Look for it.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
They might even have the play online. I didn't really look on YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know. Or someone told me that they heard there was a movie. So now I don't know if the movie is the play, kind of like Hamilton. They took cameras to Broadway and that's the movie,
Mhm.
or if like they remade it into a whole nother movie. But yeah, I'll have to look. I'll have to look for that. I hear it's being made movie. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, thanks for
And
coming.
if you
All
know
from
any other good stories, let us know. Like if you
yeah.
know something that happened that was helped someone. I know my friend, his father passed away. They were supposed to get married. Like it was supposed to be like very soon in a few days from there. And I can't remember the whole story, but it was, obviously the guy's mom was a widow and just all that
This
happening.
was on 9/11.
Yeah, so they were
Okay.
like, this couple, they were planning on getting married, like, it might have been, like you said, it was a Tuesday, it might have been like that Saturday or something.
Yeah.
So
Yes, and it doesn't have to be
mhm.
about 9/11. If you know other stories of helpers, Cindy and I both like reading nonfiction and we commute. So we have time that's why we go live a lot and talk about the books we're reading. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. So, well, thanks for watching All Things
Yeah, it
Peak
was
Possible.
fun.
And
Yeah.
anyone who comes later, thanks for coming on my channel,
Thank
Cindy.
you. Thank you, Kelly.
Oh, and Cindy's channel is Cindy Bennett 13 if you want to check out
Right,
her
right.
channel. So,
All right, thank you so much.
okay, bye.
All
All
right,
right,
have a great
thanks. You
night.
too.
Bye.